Hello. The meeting notes for this meeting are not open.
Hey, Jonathan. Oh, what do you mean?
They're currently locked behind. You can't access this. You can't even view them.
Okay.
Or I can't even view them.
Can you double check you're
And now
in this group? Oh, weird.
I can access them now. Great. This is the March 9th meeting, yes? Yes.
Yes.
Do you guys do opens?
So we normally do, but right now we're on our schedule for doing the list. So we wanted to spend the whole meeting on voting and consensus.
Okay, great. I wanted to trash your schedule with a particular topic. The Alpha Omega project has a top 10,000 projects list that we're using to identify and use as a basis for reporting vulnerabilities to. And I'm working on a specification under the Open Source Security Foundation for a policy called the specification. It's the Open Source Security Foundation Compliant Automated Vulnerability Fix Campaign. Define what is considered an automated security vulnerability fix campaign that is compliant to a specific standard that has the Open Source Security Foundation seal of approval. And one of the lines in that is mandatory private disclosure that the top 10 vulnerable projects within the 10,000 critical open source projects of some list, which I was discussing using the AO list. But I thought that you guys had the 10,000 list, but apparently the 10,000 list is an AO list, not a you guys list. Would be required to disclose to those projects privately as part of the specification.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently I found out that list is not owned by this group, it's owned by the AO group. And so I was discussing with Scovetta saying, do we want to take this AO list that is what we consider the top 10,000 list and move it under this working group, or do we want to continue to own it as an AO list specifically?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a good topic.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the current question, but you guys have things on your schedule as it is. So
yeah, so you can I was talking to Caleb. Caleb had a question too about the schedule. So if you want, put it, send an email on the emailing list. We don't have much there.
okay.
And otherwise we can just add it to the next meeting.
Okay. All right.
The next meeting that's open.
Yeah,
I should say.
When is the next meeting that will be open that doesn't
Well,
have
it depends on how fast this goes, right? So we set aside 2 meetings for updating the list, and then a third meeting for finalizing it. I don't know what that means. But yeah, the faster we go, the sooner we can get back to the.
So you're doing just top 10,000, your top 100 projects.
We don't have a set number, but I think it's around there. Like right now, our list is about 100, but we're looking to add some.
So these are the top. So these are okay. So these are not most critical projects overall. These are just the top 100-ish.
And I wouldn't say top either, because we're not something not being on the list is not saying that it's not critical. It just hasn't been proposed and considered yet. So
interesting. Okay.
Cool. I see a few people here. Thanks for joining.
This is Anna. I'm from the AO team, Alpha Omega team.
Yeah, you've had an influx of all of us because we were just discussing this in our last meeting.
I'm really interested and excited to joining. So
yeah, thanks for joining. So yeah, we'll the meeting notes are the link to the meeting notes are in the calendar invite. We'll go through some new faces and then get to today's meeting, which is all about working on our v1.1 list for the set of, or list or set of critical projects. And we have a set of proposals, and we're going to go through those one by one and reach consensus. Thanks everyone for joining. But yeah, new faces other than Annapurna, you mentioned it, you're new.
Hi, Mike Scavetta. I've been here in the past, and I think most of you know me, but I lead AO.
Thanks for joining, Mike.
First,
Before we dive in, I just wanted to do a quick update that this is the last APAC friendly meeting at this time because daylight savings is changing. So in 4 weeks, when we get to the new, the next APAC friendly meeting time, it'll be the old time that we had before daylight savings, or back to daylight savings. Yeah, so let's dive in. Amir, did you have anything you wanted to say?
No, excited to dive in. I don't know if you wanted to share your screen.
Yeah,
so
I was
we
going
have
to
kind of
call.
like
Any of us could do it. Does anybody want to be the scribe and share their screen?
I can do it. I can be at
Okay.
least one of them. If anyone else would like to also pull it up and make updates, but let me share screen.
And so I guess the first question is, we've got two lists. We've got our 1.0 list that we're going to consider for removals. And then we've got our candidates list to consider for additions. Any thoughts on which one we want to do first?
Oops. There we go. Okay. I think I have my screen up in the right place.
Yeah, looks good.
Okay. All right. Do you want to just dive in from row 2?
Yeah, and so the way it works here is we want to just have anybody speak up with a yes or no, and maybe we can argue against or for it.
We're gonna do top down or just start anywhere in the list that's currently visible?
It's top down. We're going to discuss one at a time. So right now we're add minor.
Oops. Add minor. So this was from Docker pull count data originally when it was recommended. I don't know a ton about the project personally, but I don't know if anyone else has thoughts.
so AdMiner is calls itself a database management in a single PHP file, so an alternative to PHP MyAdmin. I'm shocked at the Docker pull count that's so high. Like on the same category as like Amazon Linux.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty big statistic just from the
but like the let me see. I mean, it was last touched in almost 2 years ago.
that might be in favor of maybe wanting to put some spotlight on it with putting it on the set.
Yeah, I mean, it's also a single developer project.
Mm.
That's the thing. Are we sure that Docker pull count is correct? Just seem.
I think we
Yeah.
should too.
Yeah, no, that's 100 million plus. I would vote to not call this one top 100 because I feel like the likelihood, and this is just I don't have data to support this, but I feel like the likelihood that governments, large organizations, critical infrastructure, et cetera, would be using this is say really small, but smaller than a lot of the other ones on the list.
It
I don't
seems
know,
like
that doesn't seem super satisfying, but
yeah. So we're looking at like, what would be the blast radius, right?
Yeah.
And if it's people doing single developer projects or small toy things, then I think it's a good argument for not adding it.
yeah, okay.
Do we have that idea here? Is that it is more for, building a toy PHP site, or is this something that people could use on kind of bigger, more important deployments?
Key question here. Has anybody here been a PHP developer?
Does anyone want to admit?
Okay, fine. Has
No,
anybody developed any PHP recently?
Not recently.
Okay, I think that nobody in this group is currently I don't know. It seems like the knowledge base of this group is not sufficient to accurately assess this project.
Yeah, I mean, we do have to work with what we have. We can't say no for now, basically like we didn't have any evidence.
Yeah, but based off of Michael's description, I would say this could be a no for V1.1.
I mean, I'm also seeing just from the bugs and the pull requests, like there just doesn't seem to be, I don't want to say any activity, but
So want to move consensus no. Anybody disagree?
Okay, all right.
Feel free to use emojis or whatever as well. All right, I don't see any disagreement, so move on.
Yep. We have Alpine next.
I'll vote yes. Alpine is a core base package for countless other Docker containers. If that goes sideways, lots of things are on fire.
Okay. Any other? Okay.
Yeah, so
All right. Next we have Amazon Linux.
So I'm gonna throw out a no here. I think that Amazon Linux, like, we have the Linux kernel, all the important packages in Linux we would consider. But what I think what listing the distribution here would really be describing like I don't know what Amazon Linux is based like but like is essentially describing like the RPM spec files and build systems for creating the distribution. And I don't think those are, I don't even know I didn't even see them on the GitHub page. Like, I don't know where they are. I don't know how much we can contribute to that. And oops. No, I'm getting some background noise from you. I'll just mute you. Yeah, so that's just my thoughts. Does that make sense?
Sounds good to me.
I'd say that makes sense, but another thought is when we think about blast radius,
Mhm.
I think like if this were to take AWS down, I mean, how much of the web would that disrupt?
Again, I think like the question is, what is this? You know,
Hmm.
is it something that's in the packaging, and like, is that even visible to us, or to, you know, is that even something that that can be contributed to, or
I would put Amazon Linux in the same, kind of in the same category as WSL. Like these are, while they may appear open source, these are corporate projects.
Yeah.
And I feel like I would put Android in the same category. But I'm not sure.
I struggle with this because at a certain point, any sustainable open source project ends up being backed by an organization, right? Because if you're gonna have developers spending their full time developing that project, there needs to be developers that are paid by someone to do that work. And so if you do that, that, like, you know, immediately knocks out, if you're going on the basis of it's got corporate backing, that knocks out Android, Gradle, curl, because that's curl's being maintained by, you know, a maintainer who is being paid by a company to maintain curl. Like, you know, like that, I don't think that that's a good reason to disqualify a project.
I agree. But curl, .NET is, while it is an open source project, it is primarily, well, I'm gonna get in trouble by the lawyers if I say this. It is obvious to everyone which large corporation manages .NET in like layman's terms. Should .NET be on this list? I would also argue no, for the same reason that, like, it is a product more than it is a project.
It satisfies
So-
their
I'm talking as I'm
it's-
thinking. That's never good.
It's open source, it's
Yeah.
critical, it has a blast radius, right? Like,
I would argue that both Android and .NET are critical, and I think that, Jonathan, you're right. Like, I don't think that being primarily developed by one company should disqualify it. But I think this Amazon Linux is a different case here. Like the files and projects and, you know, the code that makes up a distribution, I think that's not what somebody had in mind when they added this here. I think that the distribution is like the packaging and the scripts and the build, the decision of like which to include. And I don't know that that's an actual open source project. You know, I'm saying no here, not because it's an Amazon product, but because the distribution itself isn't a thing that, you know, makes up whether it's critical or not, and also is something that is that can be contributed to.
That makes sense to me. So, I mean, in looking at the repositories under GitHub/Amazon Linux, I'm not seeing like the giant repository of all things.
Yeah, exactly.
Amazon Linux.
there is the Linux, there is the fork of Linux.
Yeah, they have a fork of the kernel, and the kernel, you know, the upstream is critical.
Yeah.
Okay. So then, what was this consensus on Android?
I would
have a
say it
consensus
is.
there. I would say it is too.
Yes.
Okay.
Oops, sorry about that. Okay. Next we have Apache HTTPD.
The most popular, or was at one point the most popular HTTP server on the internet, and it's open source. I think that qualifies.
Yeah,
Let's
I
see,
think
let's see what
there's-
it shows now. Oh yeah, it's still 32%, slightly
Yeah.
behind the Nginx.
Yeah,
So
and also Nginx should be on this list, which I'm presuming is under N.
I'm pretty sure it is, yeah.
Yep.
Next we have ARM trusted firmware. This was from a GitHub issue that someone recommended. I mean, isn't this in like every, like all hardware practically, almost all the hardware in the world? That might be too much of a blanket statement, but it's ubiquitous, I think, ARM chips.
is it open source? I mean, I know the source is available freely, but is it actually open source?
Hmm.
Trying to see.
And
Yeah.
is this the firmware that people use?
BSD3 clause, it says.
Okay. Is this the firmware that anybody uses? Hi there, David Wheeler. Sorry, I'm trying to be at
Hi,
two
David.
meetings at once.
Thanks, David.
Yikes!
What?
How are you pulling that off? 2 meetings at once.
Go to one, then go to the other.
Oh,
I have no better system. Shoot my shot and then run away before anybody can fire back. Okay. The description actually answers my question. It runs on every ARM-based Android device. Wow.
I mean, I think if we're gonna trust the submitter, which I think we should, I would vote yes.
I don't have any different information, and that answers, we've just answered the two key questions. Is it OSS? Yes. Is it widely used? At least according to this, yes. And frankly, ARM, I know that there are non-ARM based Android devices, but the vast majority of Android, just by itself, that tells me billions of devices, we care.
Okay.
Ah,
Another one from suggested from the GitHub.
okay. Yeah, but this one doesn't have a rationale in term. I mean, it's a description, but it's not a justification. There are many. I mean, many people have written small bootloaders. The question is, how widely is this used?
Hmm.
I don't have good answer for that information.
The mailing list seems to be pretty busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not.
Though they do patch over the mailing list. So.
It looks like it came from U-boot v2 as it was derived from DOS U-boot.
The question is, what is widely used now? I'm looking
Mhm.
at an article by the New Stack. Granted, it's 2020, not 2023, but I don't really find I'm having trouble finding better sources. I mean, it claims that U-boot is by far and away the most common.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess I would initially say probably do U-boot first if we do any bootloader for an embedded. And by the way, these are bootloaders for embedded systems as opposed to say Grub, which is a different thing. Is Grub's already in our list, right?
No distractions. Um,
Yeah, I would say I would want U-boot first, just with the. I mean, granted, this is a paucity of information. I probably should be in the spreadsheet everybody else is looking at, shouldn't I? All right.
yeah, the same issue suggested U-boot. It's going to be further down.
Okay. Um, huh. All right, I'm just going to type in, whoops, how come that's not typing in? Copy, paste, okay.
So I'm taking a look at the original issue, and like bootloaders is listed as a category. Like these things are important, and the first two
Yes.
are U-boot and Grub, and then it's this
Right.
one third. So I would say let's go. So I would just say let's vote. I mean, my vote is no, I guess. And then if we get any more evidence that this is also like as widely used as the other two, then we can reconsider.
No,
Sounds
sounds
good to me.
reasonable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that consensus, or anybody have any reason to say yes?
I'll agree with no.
Okay.
All right. You'll notice I'm adding an actual justification. I think we ought to try to do that.
Yes. Thank you.
I realize we're recording this, but those are rather painful to hunt through.
So next
Bash.
we have Bash.
Dash,
Okay.
yes.
I thought I commented on this. Is that not? I don't see
You
it.
did.
Where are the? Oh, here we go. Yeah. I proposed yes, but the question is for why. And basically, I think the primary thing I would worry about is both subversion of the project and ensuring that. Oh, I can't easily see the text. Let's see here, and making sure that when it handles malicious data, it won't cause problems. So there's some weird, so there are some things that you can easily misuse in shell, but they're required by the standards and really not changeable now. Like you have to double quote, if you say $foo for a variable reference, you have to put double quotes around it. Or it might just suddenly start executing. That's bad, but required by the language. On the other hand, if you put the double quotes around it and it ran some code anyway, just because it referenced it, that would be really, really bad. So I think the answer is yes because of wide use, but the focus should be on those aspects. Because if somebody just hands an arbitrary bash shell to somebody, the fact that bash can run code isn't a problem. That's the whole point.
Yep, agreed.
Okay.
All right, so let me put that there. I'm going to copy my own text. Well, unless I can. If I can. Yikes, why can't I do that? All right.
I got you, David.
All right. Oh, there we go. Yeah, you don't need my name there. I think if this is that a group consensus?
Mhm.
When I first saw that, David, I thought you were trying to be like, duh, like, of course this should be on the list. And then I realized it was your initials.
Oh, yeah. I pretty much always use my middle initial when in anything written because there's too many David Wheelers, and it gets even worse with initials. So that is my attempt of being clear.
All right.
Bitwarden.
Next we have Bitwarden. Yeah.
I
Open
mean,
source password management solution.
I think yes. I mean, that's a. I mean, there are some other open source password managers, and obviously there are some proprietary ones. But if LastPass has taught us anything, the answer is password managers matter.
I would strongly agree.
So how about, can I say yes? LastPass has shown that password managers matter.
I'd also add that I get the feeling that a lot of people moved off LastPass. A bunch moved to Bitwarden as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of people moved to either Bitwarden or LastPass. I think so. The short answer is yes. I think you're correct.
Any
One password?
arguments? Any arguments against?
I just want to make sure Bitwarden, because Bitwarden is like commercial open source, so right. But the open source version is open source.
It is open source, yes. It is open source and freely available into perpetuity and will never be closed source.
Perfect.
That's
Cool.
what they're promising.
That's what their
What
claim
you're
is.
paying, right? What you're paying for is a service if you run the service, which is optional. So, but I think it's fair to say, now I think right now what we're arguing is, are they critical? I think there's going to be a separate pass for, if there's existing commercial support, if we'll probably expect them to do the, say, pay for an audit. But we can still contact them, for example, and say, hey, here's some things you can do. I think there's a separate pass for where funding goes if funding goes somewhere. And I'm assuming this isn't it.
Okay.
I don't know, maybe we should have a separate column for, has commercial support. EDK2.
Who knows about EDK2?
I do not. This is one I skipped. I tried to answer for some, but I did not make an attempt to answer everything. A firmware development for UEFI and PI specs. A long time ago, I was more in the embedded space, but it's been too long. My knowledge is too obsolete. Is it possible for us to skip, or we need more information? I think we need more information about its how widely it's used, or do we not? It doesn't matter. It's an SDK. It's not the thing itself.
Yes, I propose that we come up with the yes or no here, and some no's, are going to be things that can be reconsidered in a future version with more evidence, or if we have more automation for pulling evidence, that's etc.
Right. I guess I guess the problem is it's unclear how widely used and important it is. Is that part of the problem?
Yeah.
It's unclear how widely used it is. It's okay. I think that's actually enough. All right. I do know something about boring SSL. And it's that Google actively discourages others from using it. Wait, shh.
Yeah,
Makes
discouraging is an understatement.
Yeah, I don't remember what their wording is, but it's basically we provide this, don't use it. And I think that's enough to say no, just because usage is discouraged.
I wonder
they
if
basically
it's
won't accept packages or anything. Yeah, it's their.
it may be that it's a prerequisite, like a dependency of other open source projects, so it has to be public.
Yeah, and other, I would argue critical projects do take dependencies on boring. So I think Ring in Rust ecosystem, which underlies Russell's, if I'm not,
No, Russell's re-implements. I'm pretty sure they don't use boring SSL.
they use Ring, and I think Ring uses boring. I might be wrong, so for the record, if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. But
okay, I mean,
uh,
how's this? You may be right, but I don't think so. I mean, this is a Rust Ring boring SSL. Yeah,
As we said, we can reconsider things. It sounds like we should say no and make progress.
Yeah, propose no.
Reconsider.
Is
The
there-
motion to
is there a
reconsider
way
is
to-
laid on the table.
Is there a way to flag projects to be reconsidered?
I don't think we have that right now, but I mean, we do have our column F here that we're recording, which is our reasoning. I wouldn't assume automatically. I don't think we should just say no, reconsider, unless it's something that is essentially resubmitted by in a future round with somebody that submits with more evidence. So for here on, boring SSL, I don't think we should say no, let's reconsider. I think we should say no unless it's resubmitted by a future suggestion.
Okay.
and you know what? It's a little bit of a struggle. I didn't do this research ahead of time, but it does look like, darn it, Michael's right. I'll let you be right once, Michael.
I'm gonna take it.
I am teasing, of course. But in all seriousness, I wasn't aware of this. I knew of Ring, but I didn't know that it. I know of Ring because of other tools that use Ring. Not that I've really looked at Ring myself.
Yeah, but isn't this the case that we should encourage Ring to not be dependent upon boring SSL as opposed to, creating more motivation for them to stay on something that's deprecated?
It's not deprecated. As you're saying,
Well,
it's an open source
discouraged.
project that says we don't intend to support clients. But people, you can use it if you want, and some people do because maybe it's something that they would rather use, and that's fine. I don't think we should.
Yeah,
I
but
wouldn't
again,
discourage
it's
people to
critical. I
not
mean,
use it.
in some ways,
I'm saying it's not critical. Like I don't think we should
Right.
put it on our list.
but that's what I'm saying. Is Google discourages it, and it seems like they're actively saying this should not be critical. It may be used. It may be a dependency, but that's different than being
Just because they say it isn't doesn't mean it isn't. I mean, if everybody in the world started using it tomorrow, then
yeah. But then somebody would probably fork it, and we wouldn't be boring.
yeah,
SSL.
exactly. Yeah.
All right. So, can we at least say there was significant debate? No matter what, no matter what, I think, I think that's honest.
Okay, that sounds fair.
So how's this? Can I add that we may want to revisit this? I think that's fair. I mean, that's true for anything, but I think this one in particular is contentious. We may revisit this in particular. Because, oh my God, okay. All right. Okay, I'm gonna say similar things about GNU Make that I would about Bash. You know, Bash and GNU Make are both everywhere. And I think it's fair to say that if someone subverts it, or it can't handle malicious data when you give it the correct. Now, the malicious data argument probably doesn't really apply, but I do think the subversion does. And you can see my text.
Okay.
You buy the argument? I mean, you don't have to. All right, so I'm going to copy my text in, and if everybody agrees, great, and you don't have to.
Well, I mean, the question is, this isn't about the security threat necessarily. Is this a critical project? I think that Bash and GNU Make and most are critical dependencies in the open source software ecosystem. So I'm not certain. But maybe if we don't have as much of a contentious debate, then the GNU Make maintainers will feel very put out.
I mean, I think in the end, we decide what we decide. I'm not going to recuse myself, but I will note that many years ago, I did write a couple lines of code to tweak GNU Make. And so I actually know some of the GNU folks, not very personally, just by email, but I mean, it's a couple of years back, I think, and I use it occasionally, but I don't think that's a reason to recuse.
Does anybody read Trusting Trust? I think that in summary, I mean, I know the Trusting Trust is a little bit exaggerated in terms of its capabilities, but I think that given that it is the underlying infrastructure for compiling all operating system or most of Linux operating systems, it's probably a
right, and that's why I mentioned I would worry about malicious subversion of it. By the way, I know some people already know, but my PhD dissertation is specifically about countering the Trusting Trust attack. So if you want some nighttime reading, I can point you to a document, which, unlike most PhD dissertations, I actually tried to make it readable. So, all right.
So David, you made a comment here on this one that, can you explain the reasoning here? Like, do you have any evidence that it's as widely used, or are you just saying that it's also a build system for a make tool?
I'm sorry, for GNU Make specifically?
No, for
Mason.
Mason.
Oh, I don't have okay. I think GNU Make is used by far more often than Mason is. If for no other reason than Make has been around for decades longer. Okay. But informally, I've encountered enough uses of both Ninja and Mason to believe that there is significant use. I don't have a full-on study of it. So this is purely, what is it? The plural of anecdote is knowledge or something like that. So I mean, it's anecdotal. It's not a serious study, but I've encountered it often enough to think, there are people who use this thing. I don't know how to do a quick survey of that.
It says it can be installed through PyP. Do we have PyP to download data?
Okay, here is a short list. Okay, they themselves post a list of users. Now, some of them are pretty obscure, but QEMU is certainly not obscure. Um, Nautilus, certainly, I mean, if you're running GNOME, you're running Nautilus. You got Mesa, so if you're running any 3D, you're running that. KSH, pretty widely used shell. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to post in ours, their list of users. I mean, it's hard to beat GNU Make in terms of just sheer usage, but I think that's easy enough to justify it. But that's my opinion. What do others think? Right. I've included at least an argument for it. But others?
I could just chime in. That's an impressive looking list, as you mentioned.
I mean,
I think I mean, even if it has some uptake, I would suggest no, because it's not widely used enough. I mean, I'm just comparing the download counts between Mason and like a popular Python library.
yeah, I don't think that's really the right measure there, because
Yeah.
I mean, if only if you download it, but they're the one. I mean, the challenge here is it ends up being used to build a lot of other things, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, but is it a lot or not? I think is the
For a
question.
build system, that's, I mean, GStream, things like GStreamer and GTK. If you use a GNOME system, which is the default on almost all the Linux distros, that means you're using this software and you're using that builder.
I mean, that's a desktop, right?
Yes. Well, no, that's really not. It's whatever. It's a GUI interface that's used for desktop and servers.
Can you write, what is the cost of saying yes?
It also includes systemd, like, and Xorg, if you want.
The cost of the cost of hitting yes here is that the 101st item won't be looked at. I guess is the risk that we're bumping something else off that should be on the list that isn't.
I mean, but this isn't a guarantee that it's going to be, that we're going to fund it. The OpenSSF is funded. I mean, so I just want to make,
right. Yep.
I'm not just saying that, put in everything, but I'm saying that, saying that it's critical doesn't mean that there's any commitment from the OpenSSF or anybody in this group that this is something worth
funding, right?
Funding, supporting in any other way than,
Right. I think that, but I think Michael's right. Basically, you don't want to just say yes because.
Yeah, I agree.
But I think it's met the bar, because I'm looking at things like GNOME and X Windows,
right,
and so on. And that's, I mean, we've got millions of users.
Well, I think there's some that have support multiple build systems. So I'm not certain that being on the list means that that's the only build system. But yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I mean, Postgres is on there. So if you like to store data in a database that uses Postgres.
I know, but that's what I'm saying is I don't think that Mason is the only build system. I mean, I think that it's one of build systems that Postgres supports, and that, so I don't think we should look at this as that, okay, if Mason didn't exist, that you couldn't build the project. I think it's a union, not an I think that it's a more widely, Wayland can build without that. I think Postgres supports CMake or Make or others. So I mean, there are multiple build systems that many of these projects. I mean, bzip2 doesn't require Meson, for example. It's supported. Like you can go to Node.js and here's how to build Node.js with Ninja. Here's how to build Node.js with Meson. Here's how to build it. It's one of many. So yeah, don't look at this as that it's a strict requirement.
That's interesting. All right, let me add that to the little notes here, because but that said, it's not necessarily required in many cases.
Yeah, so
Build systems.
it's how to interpret that list of users. Yes, that's the broadest, most encompassing list of potential users.
Right, which is different from GNU Make. I mean, if you're
Yes.
using GNU Make, it's highly unlikely that you'll work without GNU Make. Yes, I realize there's.
Well, I mean, it depends if you're using a GNU Make extension, but yes, I mean, you cannot use BSD Make or AIX Make or others. Yes, if you're using a GNU Make extension, you are up a creek. Yes.
And as someone who has written many make files, I try to write portable make files. I rarely succeed. Okay. If you've ever, I've actually interacted with the POSIX folks. So if you've ever, talk to me later about the agonies of trying to stick within POSIX Make. That's interesting. All right, that makes it more complicated. And now I was looking at that list and going, oh yeah, I've heard about it. Look at that long list. And that makes this more complicated decision.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know of a major project where Meson is a strict dependency, nor Ninja is a strict dependency. But I don't know every project. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely, it has its follower. There are people to whom Meson appeals, there are people to whom Ninja appeals, and they will prefer that for their projects.
Yeah, so I think the consideration here is not, is it a strict dependency, but is it the default build, or is it the most used build for that maybe critical like Postgres critical database or software project? So, if Meson were subverted, would that mean that the attackers would then be able to subvert Postgres builds, official builds, or builds that go into different distributions, that kind of stuff?
I was leaning against this, but I think you just convinced me. Because of the place in the pipeline, the build is the last opportunity to, well, maybe that's wrong. The build would be a great place to insert malware. So if Meson was compromised to insert malware into everything that it builds, then it just goes downstream. I think in general, build technology should get kind of a bump up in criticality over like the raw usage numbers.
I think that's true, but the question is it built? Is it used? and for what? Like, is it used for just?
Yeah, I mean, for example, you go to the Postgres GitHub, and there's Meson.build, and there's GNU Makefile.in. I mean, so yes, the Meson build system was updated yesterday, and the GNU Makefile was, I mean, so they both are actively maintained for Postgres, but it's not the only way to build Postgres, meaning Meson.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it to the next meeting. Can I? There's 2 on here that I can speak authoritatively on. Does that, do you mind jumping order in order to accommodate that?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, I found some data, by the way, on required use.
The 2 that I can speak authoritatively on are Gradle and Maven. Both are build tools. Both are used about 30% of the Java ecosystem as the build infrastructure. I used to work for Gradle, so I'm partially biased. But Gradle, used as the primary build tool for 50% of the Java ecosystem, 99% of all Android apps use Gradle to build them. It's the tool of choice to build Android apps in Java. Yeah, build tools. And then Maven is used to build the other 50% of the Java ecosystem that's not being used to build Maven,
Yes.
or that's not being used by Gradle. Yeah.
Do we have any, does anyone disagree with Jonathan?
I think adding Gradle makes sense. Okay, I'm going back. I'm basically doing my quick Google foo for. I agree with you. Anecdotes are not the same as real data. So I found an interesting post of analysis from 2021 saying that specifically for Fedora, comparing it to CMake, SCons, or Meson. Meson is now required by 30% of their packages, but I'm trying to figure out if it's 30% of all packages or 30% of, yeah, it's only 30% of those require CMake, SCons, or Meson. In other words, among those three, it's 30%. But I know CMake is a huge use. Okay. The number of packages that build require Mason grew to almost, what, 600? 600. All right. So
sorry, one last data point. If on GitHub, if you search for the count of files called Mason.build, which I'm assuming is the most obvious indicator that you're using Meson, it's about 70,000. If you look for Makefile, it's 3.7 million.
Right.
And was a CMake list.txt? Is that the CMake?
There's several, but
yeah, it's 1.6 million. So it's an order of magnitude less than Make, but I'm okay keeping it. Like, I'm okay either way.
Yeah, I think no matter what, GNU Make and CMake are far more common.
Yeah.
Basically, the article that I have there says that 600 packages of Fedora depend on it. If we have Mason, we really have to add Ninja, by the way, because Mason generates file for Ninja. But yeah, this one's a close call.
Yeah, I think it's a close call too. I mean, I'd support it either way. I mean, I would lean no, but I mean, I would be okay. Like if we see more and more usage, if we see that it's like an upward trajectory, maybe that's a good reasoning.
I think there's something of an upward trajectory, but it's not like dominant. It's not like, say, either CMake or Makefiles. Which, granted, once you create a build system, it's a pain in the butt to change. So there's a sunk cost as well. I mean, I'm okay with no for now. We can change later.
Anybody else? Somebody say something.
Okay with no.
Okay. Agree.
I think it is compelling to know that it's just one of the options and it's not absolutely necessary.
Other build tool. How's this? Lots of debate for now. Other build tools are far more common. And in many cases, Meson and Ninja. Meson is an option, not a requirement. Okay, I think Ninja goes for the same reason.
Mhm. Okay, so we're good on Mason and Ninja. You want to call it here for the day? Let's see how far
I think so. You know,
we got a lot more to do. So we might be doing this for 3 meetings.
You know what? That's actually kind of what I was expecting.
Well, that's the thing is, I mean, do we want to, I guess at the next meeting, do a quick run through of things that we think are just do it like a straw poll of what's not contentious to just sort of get that out of the way and then focus on the ones that actually have some disagreement? Or do we want to just sort of randomly hit those when, you know?
You could create like 10 columns and assign everybody a column, and then you just tick off the one yes, no, and then if 100% of people all say yes or no, then we don't really need to debate.
Yep. That's how we did the first version. And I think the notion was to not do it that way. But I actually, after trying to muck with comments, I think I prefer the columns. I have now done it the other way. I have now determined why I don't want to do it that way anymore.
yeah, but I'd say if any are just kind of absolute yeses, they can be noted ahead of time, and you know, unless there's something we didn't consider, you know, those can pretty much automatically go through. And then, like David said, we can focus on the ones that might be a little more contentious.
Yeah, I'd say go in and drop a comment on anything that looks obvious, and that once we get to it in the meeting, we can just hit yes or no and then keep moving on as quick as possible.
What do you think about the proposal of making more columns for different people so that we can quickly eyeball disagreements? I can put my name
Sure,
up there.
yeah.
All right, we can have a David column.
David column.
Feel free to
And
add
We need 2
column.
David columns, excuse me.
That's right.
DAW.
there's a David A. Wheeler.
All right.
Despite whatever things, yeah, David Wheeler and I are not the same person.
I will note that there's another David Wheeler who does a lot of Perl things. So, and that's not me. So.
It was great to see everybody, and thanks for showing up. It's a good turnout, and hope to see you all next time.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, bye. Have a good afternoon.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.